Welcome to North Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. Your host with the most is me, Dusty O'Connell, and I am joined by writer for coldomaha.com, 1500ESPN.com, and many other wonderful sites around the internet. Generally useful human and Vikings blogger extraordinaire, Arif Hassan. How you doing, Arif?
Good, man. How are you?
I would be better if I had not bitten my tongue last night.
Yeah.
It's really, we were talking about it a little bit in the pre-show. It's very emasculating, and very just like infuriating when you can't even do a thing that you do multiple times a day for your entire life.
Your fundamental competency as a human.
I know. I can't be trusted to not just like attack my own body in ways that...
Right. It's like you failed a task that not only have you practiced for so much of your life, nearly all of it, but one that your ancestors have perfected over tens of thousands of years.
Millions. You can go all the way back to Australopithecus, and I'm sure he could eat food.
Yeah, I'm sure they chewed as well, yes. You really screwed this up.
Lucy's teeth show signs of lots of chewing. Now so does my tongue. It's like if I took a hammer just with one hand and just bashed my other hand with it.
Yeah, essentially.
But now my voice sounds a little funny because my tongue is all swollen. Become a contributing member of I will do less talking. You can make a one-time donation in any amount you would like that to PayPal.me/NorthCode. If you would like to become a recurring contributor to the show and flip us a few bucks every month, we suggest about Tree Fitty, keep the Loch Ness Monster at bay. But we have people donating as little as $1 a month and as much as I think 10 is our highest, 10 or 15. But yeah, you can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and throw a few bucks our way every month. Skip one of those fancy coconut milk lattes at Starbucks and give that money to us instead. Allow us to keep generating such amazing digital multimedia content for you, both during the season and not. And
so I'm gonna not to like dampen the contribution drive, especially for the holidays. Please give. Do they have coconut milk lattes at Starbucks?
Yes.
Huh.
Oh, dude.
I love coconut milk in all of its non-milk replacement applications, so I'm not actually up for this.
I strongly suggest the coconut milk caramel macchiato. It is, I mean, it's functionally dessert. There's so much sugar in that caramel syrup, but it's so good.
Oh, I love sugary coffee drinks. I get the campfire mocha at Caribou all the time. In fact, there's two. Not really three, but there's two Caribou where I walk in. Where as soon as I walk in, they start making a large campfire mocha, hot with milk chocolate, extra shot.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Then, yeah, iced caramel coconut milk macchiato with an extra shot. If you go venti, it's like 4 shots and like a $7 drink. But in this case, genuinely worth it. And I'm just like a 4 shots of espresso kind of guy with maybe like 1 or 2 pumps of white mocha. So it's kind of like a Vietnamese coffee. But yeah, coconut milk. Also Norse Code. Please throw a couple bucks our way if you're considering gift giving this year. And we will be eternally grateful for your support, as we are to all those who have contributed in the past. Thanks, everybody. Now then, we have a football game this week. We wanted to sneak in and give you a quick little preview of the upcoming game at home against the Colts. Primarily, it's going to be a discussion of the ever-changing injury situation. Luckily, we just got the Friday update for the Vikings. The Colts are battling their fair share of injury troubles, but I guess let's start at the top. Chances Adrian Peterson plays this week? Probably pretty slim, huh?
Yeah, I don't think he's been... So, I think there's another process. Like, I think that when you designate someone to return, they get 21 days before they get to be active. So I think that there's like a process that they have to go through before they can be considered available for being active, as it were.
So even though
for example, the Vikings tweeted out an injury report that doesn't include Adrian Peterson's name. So my guess is so the Vikings official injury report has his name, but like the article that they wrote themselves about it does not.
So the idea is that he is practicing with the team, but not available to play.
Correct.
For another week? This is week 2?
Until they designate that he's available to play.
Oh, okay. So they have 21 days to designate him, after which point he will be available to play.
Right. Yeah. So this is crazy because there's like 2 levels of designation. So after week 11, they had the capability of designating him for return, which they've done. And designating someone for return, I believe, just allows them to practice. And then they must designate that player for the active roster. Which is weird because I think that he now counts towards... Man, this new IR stuff gets me every year. I think he... No. Okay. He does not now count against the 53 even, so yeah.
Okay, and hence the 21 days, so that the team has time to figure out its 53-man implications while still being able to practice and get Peterson back up to speed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So no Peterson.
No Peterson. No Harrison Smith either. No Brandon Fusco.
Wait. Did Eric Thompson just tweet out that he's playing Sunday? Okay, so Darren Wolfson and Eric Thompson both tweeted out that on that DJ Ski program that we're listening to before the show, Adrian Peterson announced that he'll play Sunday.
Well, we waited like 20 minutes to start the show, and yeah.
On the website, he is listed as reserve injured. This is nuts.
So let's go back to last week when you talked about Adrian Peterson's penchant for just like saying things.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of, but he can't. It's not like he can just like lie about it. Like, there's no way that he would say it without the Vikings telling him that he would. I'm not saying there's no way he would say it without the Vikings telling him that he's clear to say it. Like, obviously he would just say stuff. But there's no way he would say it unless it was like true, right?
Yeah, this seems to be like the sort of thing that you wouldn't say unless you would get in a lot of trouble for saying this if it was not true and the team was like, dude, WTF. Ben Gessling and Andrew Kramer both now chiming in, saying that the Vikings, like we were just saying, need to make a roster move and officially activate Adrian Peterson before he can play. So, farewell, Zach Line?
It's probably not going to be a Zach Line.
No.
My guess is it's going to be one of the guys that they like very recently promoted from the practice squad, who I can't even remember anymore. Toby Johnson's one of them. I don't think it's going to be him. I don't think it's going to be Rashad Hill. I think it's going to be the other guy, because there's one other guy. Man, I'm really on board. Yeah, I'm so on it today.
Well, this did sort of catch us on our back foot. We were briefly listening to the DJ Ski streaming channel where we were promised big Vikings news, or Adrian Peterson promised us an announcement. Then we got tired of listening to hip-hop and decided to do the show, whereupon Adrian Peterson just massively upstaged us.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds about right. Yeah, no, it might actually be Toby Johnson. Who knows, man? Everything's wild.
Wow. So let's continue as though we had not heard this, and then maybe we can circle back around to this at the very end and see if there's any other, if anyone else can corroborate this nasty rumor that Adrian Peterson will be back on the field.
Right.
People who will not be playing for the Vikings this week, per today's Vikings PR injury report: Harrison Smith, Brandon Fusco, Trey Waynes, Laquan Treadwell. Joe Berger is questionable. Is he still in concussion protocol? I imagine that's...
No, if he was, he'd be ruled out if he was still in the protocol, because I think that you need like a day off the protocol before you can Yeah, something like that.
So this might just be
the
lingering
Vikings say
symptoms?
that they expect him to play. They expect him to play as the guard instead of Fusco, with Nick Easton remaining at center.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Joe Berger will be the one hopefully sacking Andrew Luck.
Yeah, and then Matt Asiata is questionable because of ankle and also illness. He's listed as ankle illness. His ankle is actually not a problem. So he had an ankle listed on last week's injury report, and so it needed to be listed on this week's injury report. But he is a full participant until Friday, where he did not play, and the reason he did not play was illness. So I'm guessing that he's going to be fine, good to go.
They'll fill him up with Dayquil and hydrate, send him out.
Yeah, exactly. And then Mackenzie Alexander, who knows? I'm sure he's fine.
And then a handful of people with who are playing with injuries but are fully expected to play, which is good because
Sam
Marcus
Bradford,
Sherrills is on that
Griffin,
list.
Marcus Sherrills, yeah.
Yay!
Stephon Diggs, Edmund Robinson, and Justin Tratto, who injured his forehead after a sideline collision involving an Adam Thielen play. When I initially read it, I thought it was they were celebrating and he headbutted Adam Thielen, but that it wasn't that hilarious or dumb.
Helmets on, guys. Helmets on. if you're gonna headbutt. On the flip side of the ball, notable players who will not be joining the Colts on the field this week. Lineman Arthur Jones is out with a groin injury. Although actually looking at the fantasy news report on CBSSports.com, it looks as though it might be the same story as Matt Asiata. Arthur Jones was a little under the weather Friday and missed practice, but again, probably Dayquil and fluids.
The Colts have not updated their Friday practice injury report, so I assume that CBS is getting their information from like reporters who have tweets.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Arthur Jones, so one of the things I was talking about with the Colts is that this is like a team that you might as well just like run up the middle on because they're not good against the run in their run package. And Arthur Jones is a critical part of the being bad at it effort. So if he's gone, it really has no impact on the game plan.
Excellent. Well, I have discovered a more recently updated version of the injury report.
We were just on it today. We're so prepared.
We are killing it today. Well, we had so little to talk about that we had to fill a bunch of dead air somehow. And why not do it by saying nothing? According to StampedeBlue.com, the SB Nation Colts blog, 4 players out for Sunday's game against the Minnesota Vikings: Denzel Good, Art Jones, Dante Moncrief, and Joe Reitz will be out.
I think it's Reitz.
Reitz?
Reitz. I think with Joe Reitz out, that means Joe Haeg is playing, which makes their offensive line almost as bad as the Vikings' offensive line. Joe Haeg has played a bunch of different positions. He's a North Dakota State alum, so I have to hate him. But you know, he's actually been pretty good at playing. Like I think he's played 4 different positions along the line. He's actually been all right, but he's still, I think, a relative weak link. He would be a weak link on most teams. I think with the Colts, it's a little bit more up for debate who like a weak link would be. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out who their offensive line would be. I'll just check our lads. I'm sure they know.
Well, I can tell you that it will not be the starting line of Jack Mewhort, Denzel Good, and Joe Reitz, and Anthony Costanzo. Although Costanzo will be there at left tackle, it'll be all backups other than left tackle, which is a situation that will be very familiar to Vikings fans.
It's Anthony Costanzo, Jonathan Harrison, who's bad, Ryan Kelly, who is all right, Joe Haeg, who is not a very good guard, but he's filled in, you know. And, oh my God, LaRaven Clark. He's their TJ Clemmings.
So this is not a good situation for Indianapolis. is what I can glean from this. Especially if the Colts are missing offensive weapons like Dante Moncrief, who's also out.
Yeah, and Moncrief has been having a disappointing year, but he's better than like Chester Rogers, who essentially would be the person who like steps up and replaces him. They don't have any weapons outside the slot now because Philip Dorsett's very disappointing, and so really all you have is T.Y. Hilton. I know that Jack Doyle has made some plays for them, as has Dwayne Allen, but they're both not particularly good tight ends. So yeah.
It sounds like they're not going to have a whole lot of choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's just shutting down T.Y. Hilton, which I guess is easier said than done.
I guess we'll find out.
He's not like Kelvin Johnson. Like, if you designed a game plan around him, I can't imagine that's like where the Colts want to be.
No, but that's, I mean, kind of where they're at. Well, let's go on and talk a little bit about the Vikings defensive situation. I mean,
sure.
We're still looking at Anthony Harris and Andrew Sendejo basically splitting time on T.Y. Hilton, and that doesn't seem like optimal to be.
Yeah, well, they're probably going to want to use T.Y. Hilton deep, so we're probably going to see a lot of Sendejo and Harris involved with T.Y. Hilton. I'm really curious as to how they're going to handle him when he's not in the slot. So, for example, you've got Xavier Rhodes, who follows the top guy usually, and in this case, that's obviously T.Y. Hilton. You've got Terrence Newman, who tends to follow the other guy, but Newman has a skill set that I think is better suited for Hilton. So Rhodes, very big, very tall, very good at like being physical and stuff like that, and he's very good against like these big receivers, right? Like your Kelvin Benjamins and your Alshon Jeffries. But against like your Julian Edelmans and your T.Y. Hiltons and your Odell Beckhams, I feel like I would actually rather have Terrence Newman, despite the fact that Newman is old, because it seems to me that Newman hasn't lost a step. And so that's like your first concern with these guys is speed. And, Xavier Rhodes has the speed. So, like, obviously from that match perspective, it makes sense. But for Terrence Newman, the reason I prefer him is because these guys are also, like, really quick. And they have the ability to generate, separation with quickness off of the line of scrimmage. And they can get in and out of their breaks really, really easily because of their agility. And Rhodes has a bit of an issue with that because of how stiff he is as a corner. Newman is much, much better about that, and he's still fast. And so I actually almost would rather have Newman on Hilton, especially because Newman has been so good this year that he's, and he's been covering a lot of number two receivers. You have to keep that, in mind. But I feel like a player of T.Y. Hilton's quality, just overall, he's covered before, and he's done it well this year. But T.Y. Hilton's skill set, I just think it matches it better than Newman. So hopefully they'll have Newman, not completely or always, but Newman largely shadowing Hilton so that you can avoid some of the matchup problems deep when Hilton breaks deep into the safety area. Obviously, in zone coverage, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, and you're just going to have to deal with Anthony Harris and Andrew Sendejo. But for the most part, I would like Newman to deal with T.Y. Hilton.
Well, all right, so let's look a little bit closer at Andrew Luck specifically. Without the help of some key pieces on our defense, given Andrew Luck's propensity for scrambling, and given how badly Matthew Stafford embarrassed the Vikings by scrambling around in the game against the Lions, who's going to sack Andrew Luck?
Well, I mean, Everson Griffin's going to be healthy, and he's got chase down ability, and Daniil Hunter has got a lot of good chase down ability. I think that you're right, that like his propensity to scramble and his ability to create space through the lanes that are given to him, real problem, and that he has the ability to avoid those sacks. But he's also he trusts his body to do a lot, and sometimes that includes like running through people. And actually, he's like 250 pounds. Like people don't realize that he's as big as Cam Newton, and that's actually a fairly rare size for a quarterback. So it's not as if he's like completely wrong about that. But he does like put his body at risk. He still, for example, has a really high sack rate among quarterbacks. So I think that the Vikings are probably going to get home just because he likes to keep the play alive. But you're right that they're going to have to close down those rushing lanes that are going to be created from four-man 4-man rushes. And so probably what you're going to have is someone like Anthony Barr essentially just spying him and following him through those rushing lanes to make sure that he doesn't break free, and then just having your 4 other offensive or defensive linemen just rush traditionally. And you're probably going to have Linval Joseph flushing Andrew Luck into Everson Griffin, or Everson Griffin chasing him into Daniel Hunter and stuff like that. I think it's a good matchup for the defensive line, but I think that you're right that you have to watch out for Luck's willingness to scramble, or his willingness to just turn it into a running play. He's very good at both of those things. And so they'll have to be relatively disciplined in the rush lanes. They'll have to be relatively smart about the angles that they'll take the pass rush in. But if you've got Anthony Barr aligned with what that pass rush is doing, like if he knows what gaps the pass rushes are attacking, he'll be able to sort of guess ahead of where Andrew Luck will most likely take his rushing lane. And then also he'll have to watch, if someone overreaches or overruns their play, Andrew Luck might just take his gap instead of the one that ended up being open and stuff like that. He'll have to watch. But I do like Barr in that capacity, especially because he's also an unusually sized large linebacker. And you can deal with a quarterback like that. So, yeah, and I think you're probably going to end up with, with a good number of sacks in the game. If you end up with 35 dropbacks for the Colts, I wouldn't be surprised to see 3 or 4 sacks.
Given the relative softness of the Colts offensive line.
Yeah, I mean they have to deal with having LaRaven Clark. Joe Hag at guard has been. I mean, he's not been bad or anything like that, but I think he's a liability and to be a weakness on most offensive lines. Jonathan Harrison hasn't played a ton of snaps this year, but he's been bad when he's played. He played, more snaps last year. Wasn't great then either. He even played snaps in 2014. Wasn't great then. So, the only good player that they have is Anthony Costanzo, and they've got a pretty okay center in Ryan Kelly, who's, he's a rookie this year, so, maybe he'll get better. But for now, he doesn't do enough to sort of overcome, the potential problems that could arise, especially if they end up being a blitz-heavy team. And I don't think that the Vikings necessarily need to, but, in that situation where they do need to, they've got, weaknesses at both guard positions. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to isolate Ryan Kelly and prevent him from doubling a defensive tackle and helping his team out. So I wouldn't even be surprised if we saw a bunch of double-A looks where nobody blitzes, just so that the center remains occupied. And that covers the rushing lanes, which is nice.
Yeah. In the event that the Colts decide to run the ball, which I don't anticipate we'll see too much of that from either team this week.
I mean, I really think the Vikings should be very willing to run it on the Colts. I'm not saying that they should forego it's not okay. So the Colts just have a bad defense. Let's just get that out of the way. And they're bad at both things. But the thing is, I have so little faith in the Colts' defense to defend the run that I feel like this is a game where you feel like if you wanted to revive the rushing game, maybe this is where you do it, especially with Adrian Peterson. They're worse against the rush than they are against the pass. They're not very good against the pass. I would like to, feature Adam Thielen, throwing downfield to Sam Bradford, or Sam Bradford throwing downfield to Adam Thielen. I'd like to feature Stephon Diggs intermediate against, whatever jamokes they'll have to put up at defensive back, which I believe includes Rashawn Melvin. That dude is bad. I like the defensive back matchups. I mean, obviously I do. They have a bad defense. But I also like attacking deep because even though Mike Adams has been playing well, the other safety, TJ Green, is not playing well. I like attacking intermediate with Diggs because neither of those linebackers are playing well. They lost, some pretty good linebackers earlier in the season, and they don't have anyone adequate to replace them. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jerick McKinnon catching passes in the middle of the field against those linebackers, and I wouldn't be surprised to see tight ends taking on, TJ Green and Antonio Morrison. So there's a lot of passing opportunities, and there's probably more passing opportunities than running opportunities. But I feel like the Vikings, they're a team that inherently they just want to run if they can. I feel like the Vikings will end up running just because, it's such a weak front to play against.
Yeah, with the return of Adrian Peterson, that's I guess we know what first down is going to look like.
Right. So I find this interesting. So I was looking into this earlier. I didn't end up tweeting this out or putting it into an article, but with Adrian Peterson last year, the Vikings ran out of shotgun on 10% of their runs. So obviously just not very much. It was a fairly rare event, and when they were in shotgun, if you look at it as a percentage of runs, it's only 10%. If you look at it as a percentage of shotgun snaps, it's even smaller. And so they just didn't run out of shotgun that often. And, we know the meme. Like, Adrian Peterson just doesn't run well out of shotgun. In fact, last year, he averaged 1.6 yards a carry out of shotgun. This year, the Vikings are a third of their runs are on shotgun, which 10% to 30% in some ways doesn't seem like a lot, but in other ways it does, because it's 3 times the amount. The Vikings this year have averaged more running out of shotgun than they have running out of from out of under center. And individually, each of the running backs has too. So Matt Asiata, Jerick McKinnon, they've both averaged more out of shotgun. Matt Asiata, I think 4.1 yards a carry. Jerick McKinnon, I think 4.8. And even what's his name, Ronnie Hillman averaged more, I think, out of shotgun than out of under center. This is not a thing with Adrian Peterson, obviously. And so they will have to shift some of their offensive play calling to accommodate that. The idea that they wouldn't is laughable, so I feel like they will. So we're going to see also just more standard runs, and up the middle against the Colts. Maybe that's the way to do it.
Stands to reason, I would say. Offensively, the Vikings will have to basically do what they've done all season, and they'll be fine, right? I mean, on paper, the Vikings are at least a little bit better than the Colts in almost every facet of the game, and I think that'll bear out, especially given the injury-prone nature of both teams' offensive lines. Although Eric Thompson writes in the Daily Norseman that the Colts have given up a whopping 40 sacks this season to the Vikings' mere 29.
Yeah, well, the Vikings are doing something the Colts aren't doing, which is accommodating, right? They figured out, and that's one of the reasons. And this is even before Norv Turner left. Norv Turner also accommodated the offensive line and mediated the problems that the offensive line had, right? So only 8% or so of his dropbacks in 2015 were one step or even I think 3-step or faster. I think is actually and before he left, it was something like 30%. So they were already massively increasing the number of shorter plays, quick plays, and finding ways to prevent pressures from turning into hits and hits from turning into sacks. And then under Shermer, that increased significantly. In some games, it's high as 80%. And so I would argue that the Vikings' offensive line is worse, but it's giving up fewer sacks, both in total because of the number of passing attempts and as a percentage because of the way that the play callers are adapting to the players that they have, which is really nice, but also means that you've got fewer explosive playmaking opportunities. The Colts love explosive plays. Andrew Luck loves explosive plays. I mean, that's kind of they live and die by them. And so, and when you take a look at sort of Andrew Luck's profile as a passer this year, that kind of makes a lot of sense, right? He's in the lower half of in the league in completion rate, which is not a great stat by itself, but tells you that he's as a passer he might prefer risk a little bit more. In terms of interception rate, he's in the middle of the league, so it's actually working out for him this year. In previous years, it didn't necessarily work out for him, but they're going to like those those deep downfield shots. For example, he's near the top in yards per completion. I'm sure if I took a look at his average depth of target, which actually I can just take a look at that right now. It's not as high as it was last year. So it's somewhat higher than average at about 9.0. But yeah, I mean he likes to just make relatively risky decisions, and so That, along with the Colts' offensive play calling overall, just exposes them to a lot of pressure and therefore a lot of sacks, because they'll take those 7-step drops. They'll take those deep play action passes. And then that means that, he's exposed a little bit more. And that's the problem that the, fans had with the Vikings last year, is that they weren't accounting for that. The Colts still haven't accounted for that. It's one of the reasons that, Chuck Pagano should be fired. But
I mean, that's so Sam Bradford, we don't have to have as many conversations with him about this, because he's just not a huge, he's a big dude, but he's not a scrambling quarterback in the same sense that Luck and Stafford are. He would much rather be a quick, accurate passer, it seems like, and the numbers would bear that out.
Yeah, no, I think so. He's got the lowest depth of target in the league, or he did the last time I checked. I have it up. Yeah, he's still got the lowest depth of target in the league. That was mostly built off of 4 games, the first 4 games under Pat Shurmur. He's actually been more bold the last 2 weeks in terms of his relative depth of target. In fact, I can just sort by the last 2 weeks and take a look. And yeah, he's not at the bottom of the league. I'll just say that he's 25th of 33 in average depth of target over the last 2 weeks. So he's gotten more bold. But you're right. Bradford is. I think this is more a collaboration with play calling, but Bradford has been much more risk averse, much more consistent. I think he might lead the league in completion rate. Maybe not. He's certainly up there in terms of both accuracy and completion rate. I think he is leading the league.
I think he does.
Rate. Yeah, because it was he led the league in completion rate, and then Drew Brees overtook him. I think week 13, and then he took it back. So great. Anyway, he's leading the league in completion rate. He's very nearly leading the lead in accuracy rate. He's the lowest, or one of the lowest, interception rates in the league. And that's a product of a playing style that is influenced by play callers who understand, sort of what the limitations of the offensive line give them, and also influenced by who Sam Bradford has historically been and who he is as a quarterback, which is not super safe, right? He's not, 2014 era Alex Smith, and he's not, Jared Goff. He's not safe to a fault or anything like that. But he's definitely less willing to take the risks that Andrew Luck takes. And that means, shorter passing plays and not waiting as long for plays to develop and stuff like that. And the Vikings have missed out on opportunities because of it. But they've avoided probably some risks that I'm not even aware that they were planning, that they would have taken otherwise. So yeah, they're two completely different style passers. Sam Bradford is not nearly as athletic. Over the last 2 weeks, we've seen him run a little bit more, not run, although he has scrambled, but he looked quicker on bootlegs and stuff like that. But that's just for Sam Bradford, right? They're not the same kind of athlete. They're not the same kind of passer. They go through reads at different rates. They have a different offense behind them, and that's resulted in those differences in interception rate and sack rate.
Okay, so now that we are seeing, corroboration of all these reports, which I imagine is, mostly based on just what Adrian Peterson said on the radio, that that he's going to play on Sunday. How much do you think he's going to play? How many snaps do you think he's really going to take? Should we just forget everything we know about Sam Bradford and expect to see 2.2 yards a carry on and functionally every down from Adrian Peterson? Or is he going to be in for, 10 or 15 snaps? Or is it going to be somewhere in the middle?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was 8 snaps and 5 carries. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 40 snaps and 26 carries. I think Adrian's felt like he's been ready for a while. If it works early, and this is by far the softest run defense the Vikings have been up against. If you take a look at the DVOA rush ranks in run defense, the Colts rank 30th. Below them are San Francisco and Cleveland, and just above are people that the Vikings haven't played. Buffalo, Atlanta, Oakland. Only Washington, I think, has been someone that they've played that's even remotely close in terms of rush defense. And Washington had actually an uncommonly good run defense game against the Vikings. But yeah, this is a game where the running game is probably going to look pretty good. And so if Adrian Peterson therefore continues to look pretty good, then they're probably going to keep running the ball with him. There's still some element of a pitch count to it, probably. I don't know. But if he's averaging like 3.5 yards a carry, that's more than they've been averaging for most of the year. So they're probably going to keep milking it. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 5 carries. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 8, 9, 10, 20. If I had to pin down a guess, my guess is it'd be around like 9 or 8.
All right. It doesn't concern you that as Eric Thompson, unsung hero of the day, just tweeted that Adrian Peterson is likely returning to an offense where only one lineman is still playing at the same position as when he got hurt?
It bothers me less than it does, I think, the belief that Adrian Peterson in general can revive the running game. So Thomason just tweeted out, and it's maybe not a great stat, but in his last 5 games Adrian Peterson played, including the playoff, he had 78 carries for 166 yards and 2.1 yards per carry. I think this also includes the Pro Bowl game. Did Adrian Peterson play in the Pro Bowl? I don't know who plays in that Pro Bowl anymore. I don't watch it. But if he decided to play, I don't know about including those Pro Bowl stats. That's weird. Anyway, over his last 7 games, he averaged like under 3 yards a carry, right? And over the last 2 games with the Vikings, where he was actually this year and healthy, 1.6 yards a carry, which, by the way, is the same as his shotgun snaps. I don't know, man. It's I don't feel like he can do much.
So it's like all day is going to be all day, regardless of the offensive line situation, unless it were to suddenly improve, which, I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, he's going to be all day, but the all day of this year. So he's going to be as good or as bad as he was already this year, is my guess. The only difference, I think, is just how bad the Colts' run defense is. Like, that's going to make, I think, McKinnon look better. I think it's going to make Asiata look better. I think it's going to make Peterson look better. I don't know. Maybe I'm already being pre-defensive about Adrian Peterson doing well, and I'm building in an excuse. Who knows?
Well, it sounds like if there was a game to have him come back, this would be it. At least if he wanted to make it seem as though he could still make a strong contribution until the end of the season.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, all right. Special teams, hooray! We got our boy back. Marcus Sherrills. So should we expect
God, thank God.
2 punt return touchdowns?
Yeah, obviously.
Or 3?
You've been raring to go. No, I think 2.
2 is a good number?
Yeah. The first one's only going to go for like 9 yards, right? I'm like, okay, I'm just getting back into it. Second one's going to go for 20 yards. He almost breaks it out. Third and fourth one, touchdowns.
Well, I support that. That seems like a lot of punting for Indianapolis, but that's probably fine.
I think they punt a lot.
More punting. I don't know, did we miss any key matchups? Did we miss any like truly important facets of the game? I think we covered the general tendencies of both teams and the Colts' general badness. We're able to incorporate the shocking news that Adrian Peterson is ready to play before anyone thought he was. This is what, the 3rd or 4th time that's happened?
Yeah, right. I mean, we've been discussing it basically every week anyway. Like, should Adrian return? I don't know. What happens if he returns? So we've gotten like some weeks of takes built up, and then we're just depositing them right here into your ears.
Cashing out the take bank.
Wow, both of those sounded so bad.
Yeah, I don't like how either of those sounded. What I want to know is like what kind of crazy like rehab program and like legal recovery drugs does Adrian Peterson have access to? Because obviously he's an athletic freak, but he recovers from the most severe injuries so fast. It's inhuman.
It's incredible, man. I don't know. And like, so that's the kind of thing that like makes me just believe that like all this stuff about running backs turning 31 is like irrelevant, right? Just because like but like his body inside is like a child. Don't you remember James Andrews saying he had no, scarring on his knee? That's crazy. I'm just like, when I think about that, right? But I'm like, but also, would you bet on it? Probably not. And then this year, is the first time that he's posted, yards after contact numbers this low and stuff like that. Like, well, maybe he is aging. Man, his ability to come back from injury is just inhuman. And like, in a way, like, we already acknowledge that Adrian Peterson is inhuman. We know that, like, as one of the best, runners in NFL history, that like the way that he ran was just fundamentally inhuman. And we can acknowledge all of that like he's functionally seems like he's an alien, and still just be like, but this other thing is also inhuman, where like injuries that like destroy people's knees for like a year or ever don't do anything to this guy.
8 months, it's fine. I'll be back. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. But yeah, no, I mean, I think we hit all the marks in terms of game script. The the Vegas lines, according to Vegas Insider and their like consensus page, in the time that since we started this podcast, the line has moved from Minnesota -4 to Minnesota -5, purely on the strength of Adrian Peterson's announcement that he's going to play.
So Vegas likes Adrian, I guess. That's something.
Yeah.
I would still take the Vikings -5. Even if I think that Adrian doesn't have an impact, and I think that he doesn't have a large one. I think it'll look like he will, though. I think that the Vikings are more than 5 points better than Colts at home.
So I do too. I was gonna say, even disregarding the Adrian Peterson news like completely, whether or not he plays, would you take Minnesota at -7?
No. I think -6 is where I push. So -5.5, I take them. -6, that's a push. -6.5, I'm out.
That's too many. Winning by a touchdown is a bridge too far.
Don't talk about bridges, man.
Too soon?
Too soon. I don't know if I'm talking about Bridgewater or like the 35W bridge.
Well, one of them was 10 years ago, so we're going to go with not too soon on that.
It was 10 years ago. Oh, my God. I think I had a flip phone. Damn.
It was like 11 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, people were texting me. I didn't check into Facebook. That's how I know it was long ago.
I actually watched it on television.
What?
And not even like an LCD flat screen, like a tube television. We were sitting at UND. We were in the student union basement with a collective sense of WT actual F.
Anyway, thankfully, infrastructure spending has increased massively since... What? Really? Oh.
And Teddy Bridgewater is also fine. Well then, shall we take a stab at a couple of mailbag questions before we call it a short day?
Yeah,
let's do it. Zen Cupid at ZenDBP writes in, who would win in a fight between Ben Gessling and Chris Tomasson?
Chris spent the summer watching the Mongolian Wrestling Championship. That's not a joke. I didn't make that up. That happened.
What?
Yeah. Don't you remember his tweets from the summer where he was like, here I am in Mongolia, and this is me watching the Mongolian... Like, I don't know if those are the exact tweets, but essentially they were saying, this is me watching the Mongolian Wrestling Championship, which I think was the World Championship for Mongolian-style wrestling. I don't think it was just, like, the national wrestling tournament. I think, like, people went to Mongolia
it was like
to participate in Mongolian-style
tournament
wrestling.
To compete in the largest tournament of that style.
Right.
So that gives him an edge?
I think so. He interviewed a couple of them. I'm sure he asked about techniques and stuff like that. So I think Gessling is fitter, right? I think if it was like arm wrestling, Gessling has it,
or
right?
If it was like skill tests or like bench press or 40 times.
Right, exactly. I think Gessling would win the combine, hands down, even actually. But I think Thomason's like wily, I think that he's got like, I think that he's just willing to like do more. I think if you switched him the right way, he'd just go off. So I'm taking Thomason.
Newfound background in Mongolian style wrestling, which I don't even know what that would look like. I should go back and check out his tweets from the summer. Another question from Zen Cupid. When I get a chance to see Andrew Luck, he looks great, but most people seem to think he's kind of bad. Who is right? Which is he?
Well, so I'm very much in the anti-Andrew Luck camp. But I'm willing to admit that, like, the arguments against Andrew Luck are hyperbolic, if only because they're pushing against, I think, relatively hyperbolic arguments in favor of him. There's a lot of people who think of him as a top 5 quarterback. And I think most of the pro Andrew Luck camp thinks of him as like a top 7, top 8 quarterback or something like that. And, you know, you have to admit that, like, this year he's playing much better than he did last year, right? That's like, it's a pretty important distinction. And I think that you'd be willing to even throw like last year out just because of like how many games that he played that were injured and how few games he just played in general. 2014, he actually played a lot better than he's playing now, than he played in 2013 or 2012. I think his 2012 was actually very poor. But that was his rookie year. And I think for a rookie, you know, you could say that it was fine. Just Russell Wilson and RG3 happened to outplay him that year. I think that the argument that he's a top 10 quarterback is not accurate, but I think also I understand it. Like there's so many parts of quarterback evaluation, right? There's like dozens of them, right? That when you break down a quarterback and you try to figure out if he's good or bad or why he's good or bad. And Andrew Luck hits some of those notes just phenomenally, just excellently. Like he's got pristine mechanics. He's got an incredible arm. He's got fantastic touch. You know, like he's willing to take like a lot of chances. A lot of those chances work out for him. Those are all really good markers of excellent quarterback play. He's also got a couple of bonus features, right? He's got excellent athleticism. He's got, you know, great durability despite having missed, you know, a big portion of 2015 and being consistently injured throughout that season. He's evidently like a pretty great leader. He wins the whiteboard and stuff like that. So like there's all of these parts of Andrew Luck's evaluation where he's just phenomenal. Like he's outstanding in a lot of places. And his best throws are better than most quarterbacks' best throws, for sure. And I think that's a fair way to assess him. But it's also like if you think of it this way, I don't think that people think about the proportion of good throws he has to bad. And I don't mean like bad mechanically, but like just like bad either from an accuracy or decision-making standpoint. I think that he just makes more worse decisions than quarterbacks at his level should, right? Like I think that, and then also I don't think that he's just as accurate as a lot of these quarterbacks are. And so, you know, it's just like, if people consistently talk up Andrew Luck, I think that the response to people who think that he might be currently right now a high variance but average quarterback is to argue that like he is in fact bad. It's not fair to say that he's bad, but he's a relatively inaccurate quarterback, even when you take out drops. You know, a lot of people talk about it as like supporting cast and how often, you know, they're in the wrong position, how often they drop the ball, you know, how often he has to throw away, how often he's playing under pressure and stuff like that. Those are all like very relevant dimensions of analysis. But I think that even after you account for that, he's like overrated by a lot of people. And a lot of that has to do with his pre-draft evaluation. A lot of it has to do with like the consistent frequency in which we see flashes of really excellent play. And then also on a primetime game, he like put up 45 points or whatever on the Jets. That can't hurt.
That's true. That is pretty impressive on the old highlight reel. But that's always been Andrew Luck's thing, right? Like if you made a highlight reel of all of his amazing plays, he would look like Brady-esque, if not even better.
Yeah, his highlight reel looks better than most quarterback highlight reels by far. The only highlight reel that may look better, and this is weird, but if we're only taking good plays and taking out bad plays, Matthew Stafford.
That is kind of weird to say. Why? Like,
he just has fewer of them. Like you can't knock a guy for having good highlights. He just has fewer of them. You might put Aaron Rodgers on that list too, and he obviously has more of those highlights. But he's just got a really strong arm, and he used to take a ton of chances. And now he takes fewer chances, and it's working out really well for him. But man, that dude would just do stuff.
That's the thing with Luck, though, right? Is that his highlight reel is not indicative of his week in, week out play. There's just as many video clips of him rolling out to scramble and then running back and forth the width of the field and then getting tackled as there are him, launching it 65 yards into the end zone.
Yeah, no, I think so. That's kind of what I mean. I think that a lot of the sacks that he takes, and his offensive line is bad, but I think a lot of the sacks that he takes are his fault, right? Because of that way that he plays. And if you're okay with that, you're okay with that. But it does, put you behind the eight ball, as it were. And here's something that I find actually interesting about Andrew Luck. So I was actually taking a look at this a couple days ago when people were talking about, how Andrew Luck, he does better against bad opponents than most quarterbacks do. So you play a bad opponent like the Jets, and you do well. It makes sense for people to take some of that credit away. But even after you do that, if you compare his peers to playing, against the Jets, he was incredible, right? And so I looked at Andrew Luck's, games this year, and against bad defenses, he has been better than most quarterbacks. But against good defenses, he's been worse. Like the Denver game, the Houston game, even the Jacksonville game, which you might want to give him a pass for because it was in London or whatever, and that is probably fair. He played worse. So, for example, the Denver game, he had 4.3 adjusted yards per attempt. That's below average, right? Marcus Mariota, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, Alex Smith, Derek Carr, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, they all had better games. Andrew Luck's game is very similar, actually, to Brock Osweiler's game against Denver, which I'm sure you were looking forward to when it happened.
That is accurate.
I think the only team that has a good defense that he did better than average against is Kansas City. I'm going to double check that real quick, but generally speaking, nope.
Never mind.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Here are the teams with better, or here are the quarterbacks with better adjusted yards per attempt in order of least better to most better. Right. So Andrew Luck ranks 11th among quarterbacks. So the next one ranks 10th. Derek Carr, Brock Osweiler, Blake Bortles, Cam Newton, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, Trevor Siemian, Ben Roethlisberger.
What?
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
So this is my point.
Seems
Andrew Luck has fine season statistics, but against good defenses, he has been worse than most quarterbacks have been against the same defenses. And even after you account for teammate, so statistics like this don't account for teammate play. But even after I think that you account for teammate play, he's been worse. So against the Houston Texans, for example, he played them twice so far. So he has two results. He's the 13th of 13 quarterback performances and also the 5th of 13 quarterback performances. If you average that out, of course, that's worse than average. So, yeah, that's the thing about Andrew Luck is that I think that he tends to put up these fine statistics. But I don't think that they account for a lot of important context, and I think that he is maybe better than what a lot of people who have been, talking shit about him, like me, for example, have been saying. But I don't think that he's as nearly as good as a lot of the people who are sort of on his bandwagon.
So Zen Cupid was watching Andrew Luck against the Jets, and everybody else was watching him against the Broncos.
Well, not everyone else.
Well, not everyone, but many.
But us haters, yeah.
Yes. Did you just call us haters?
Yeah. Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. It's a curious word choice, but an accurate conclusion. I am definitely a hater. Skull88 At Skull Page writes in, should the Vikings keep Pat Shurmur as offensive coordinator next year?
Yes.
Why not? It's been fine.
Yeah, also, why not? I think that most of what he's been doing has been great. I think that he has been showing, more flexibility and adaptability to what's on the roster than most other coaches. I think that there are some glaring problems, but I don't think you'll find an offensive coordinator that doesn't have those problems, or not those specific problems, but just has some problems. Some of them are less obvious than others. Pat Shurmur's just tend to be relatively obvious, which is a propensity to call plays that are a little bit short of the sticks on 3rd and long, and not being able to figure out this goal line rushing situation or goal line offense in general. And those are big problems, but I think that the ability to reduce the sack rate, the ability to reduce the interception rate, the ability to incorporate those reductions along with some big play potential are all reasons that you should definitely keep him. And, they've been willing to throw deep on one-step drops where Sam Bradford gets rid of the ball quickly. Like, half of Adam Thielen's deep shots are off of one-step drops. And so they found ways to protect Bradford and still find room for explosive plays. Definitely, I think that they should keep Pat Shurmur.
Well, yeah, and when I think of like a bad coordinator or a bad play caller, I think of somebody who is just like not proficient at Madden, like somebody who doesn't really adjust very well to the computer or the other player with the play calling, and has like a scheme in mind either for one game or for the season, and just keeps trying to ram players into a scheme. Whereas it seems like Shurmur has done a really good job of building a scheme around the shreds of a team that he's left to work with as the season goes on. It's just like, well, here's another series of interesting challenges. How can we take what we have and maximize it with things like Sam Bradford one-step drop to Adam Thielen or Kyle Rudolph or whatever. How can we emphasize what's good while minimizing what's bad when there's this much bad?
Yeah.
Well, all right. I know it's only been a couple of days since our last check-in, but do you have anything that you would like to plug on any of your websites that's upcoming? Are you gonna write a think piece about Adrian Peterson now?
I'll probably write something. We'll see. I'll probably have something up certainly by the time most people are listening to this.
Excellent. Well, hopefully that's before Sunday. I know we're kind of slipping it in under the wire, but you can rejoin us early next week when we recap the win against the Colts. It seems like a pretty easy game for us. A good step on the road to winning out, and it would be nice to have Adrian Peterson, kind of guns ablaze for Green Bay, I think.
Yeah.
Well, if you feel like this show is worth anything to you, drop on by paypal.me/NorseCode or patreon.com/NorseCode and flip us a couple of bucks. We really appreciate everyone who has done that thus far. Helps keep the lights on and ensures the longevity of the Norse Code archive, which you can find at dailynorseman.com and our website, norsecodepodcast.com. Norse Code can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. The official Twitter account is at NorseCodeDN, and if you don't follow him already, you can find Arif on Twitter at ArifHassanNFL. And do us a favor, pop on over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/DailyNorseman, and give us a like. It'd be a nice thing for you to do this holiday season. It'll only take you a second. I know you're on the Facebook. You can't fool me. And it would be a good thing for us. That doesn't cost any money. No skin off your back. But until the recap, that's going to do it for this episode of Norse Code. We will see you next week. And until then, spoons out.